So what is the difference between 16, 19 and 22-inch electric unicycle? And why is it that so many people are so excited about the announcement of the Begode T4? Have Begode finally decided to listen to what the riders actually want? And will the T4 be a hit or a dud? This week, I take the show on the road and talk about the Begode T4. Roll the intro!
Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and help spread the word of the EUC gospel. Although I don't do it often, I do love to travel with my electric unicycle. Enough so that I was willing to drag myself up at 2 a.m. just to catch a train.
Once again, I left too little time. It's 2:20 and I have 20 minutes to make it to this train station. Only in New York City, 2 a.m., it's somehow the roads are still full of cars. Look at this. The city that never sleeps. Everyone is just at the end of their night and my day is just starting. 7 minutes, really shaving it close. Oh shit. Boston train?
It's gonna board in a few minutes. Everybody traveling to Boston, you're gonna have to stand by. They're gonna go check the train, make sure everything is copacetic. Everybody got off that needed to get off.
And that few minutes turned out to be a 2 hours long wait, and I thought I was terrible with being on time. But I was willing to deal with it since riding the train is usually the more comfortable and on-time option to travel with an electric unicycle. Usually, since this ride to Boston is turning out to be neither, it was packed with weekenders and students heading back to start the fall semester. After an uneventful ride with seemingly way too many stops, we finally pulled into the South Station in Boston. We did end up making up some time, but it is not looking good for my next ferry connection.
I have exactly minus 5 minutes.
Well, you can probably tell where this is going.
I was surprised how quickly the train made it here. The train actually left New York an hour and a half late. We were only half an hour late here in Boston.
Still, that was the only buffer I had, so not really looking very good here.
Alright, I missed the boat because the 1 o'clock ferry is completely sold out. That means that there's a chance I may not get onto that one either. Meanwhile, I have a bit of time to burn while we wait for our 1 p.m. ferry. Might as well set the stage as to the subject at hand, which is Begode's latest release, the T4. So one of the huge problems with Begode is that they have had a lot of problems defining the purpose of their product. They have released so many iterations of different wheels in such a short amount of time that it is no longer clear which product is supposed to do what. Just within the suspension design, they now have 5 different wheels. There is the original EX, the Hero, the EX20S Master, and finally the T4. Unless you're someone who obsessively follow electric unicycle like me, it's really incredibly confusing as to what each one of these are supposed to be aimed at. And the price provides no guidance either because it is all over the place. For instance, the Hero, which is a 100-volt 18-inch wheel with 1800 watt-hour worth of battery pack, is priced at $3,500, higher than the latest 134-volt Master with 2400 watt-hour worth of battery pack, which is a wheel that is essentially better in all ways comparing to the Hero, but it is cheaper. But the T4 actually makes sense in this lineup. There is the EX20S with 3600 watt-hour worth of battery pack for those people who are interested in longer range. The 134-volt Master for those people who want greater speed and performances. And then you have the T4, which is the lighter weight 16-inch wheel with lesser range. And as long as it is priced appropriately, i.e. a good bit cheaper comparing to the Master, then I think they have a good solid lineup for anyone who are looking to get into an electric unicycle. Not a wheel for me, someone who like larger diameter wheels like the 22-inch Monster I'm riding right now, and someone who is admittingly a little bit obsessed about top speed. But there are just as many people who enjoy a completely different kind of wheel, something that is light, has a decent amount of torque, is maneuverable, and convenient. This is going to be the very first 16-inch suspension wheel ever, and kudos to Begode for finally building a wheel that everyone has been asking for.
So I took advantage of the few hours I had to burn and got food and charge up a bit. My camera, that is, since I figure with the 2400 watt-hour packs on my Monster, I got plenty of range for the 30 miles ride on Cape Cod, an assumption that I will come to regret.
All right, it's almost 1 o'clock, so let's go catch the ferry. I did get a call from them telling me that they were able to get me onto the boat, which is good. For those of you who are still interested in the T4, let me break down all of its specification and explain what I think of each. And we'll start by first talking about speed. The free spin speed on the T4 is 48 miles per hour, and you'll get a maximum speed of about 35 miles per hour, which is pretty much like that of the MSP. Good or bad, depends on, ooh, my gosh. Look at the line. Hi, picking up ticket?
Right here. One way.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thankfully, there were plenty of rooms on the ferry despite it being sold out, and with the sun shining and the sea breathing our face, it's hard not to be excited. And what was I saying? Right, the Gotway MSP.
That is also a nearly 4 years old wheel. Why I'm kind of slightly disappointed when it comes to top speed. With a top speed of 35 miles per hour, you can't really keep up with the traffic on a suburban road where the speed limit is higher. And as a result, you will still have to stay to the side of the street, and isn't really ideal in my opinion.
After a relatively short hour-and-a-half ride, we pull into Provincetown, or P-Town as a local like to call it, and it's here my ride actually starts. But first, even though I don't have much time, I had to do a quick tour of the colorful seaside town. I also stopped to grab a quick lunch. It doesn't quite feel like a real Cape Cod visit until you had fish and chip.
All right. Had a nice lunch, time to hit the road. So let's talk about range. People always want to know how far you can actually go with your wheel. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. The last time when I made this trip, it was with the Hsiang S18, which only had a 1,000 watt-hour battery pack. I was able to make my way about halfway, and then I had no choice but to charge. By the way, from Provincetown to my friend's house, it's about 30 miles. You see, because I was running low almost the entire trip, I was not able to get anywhere close to what the maximum speed of that wheel is, which is 30 miles per hour. For the most part, I was cruising along at like 10 to 20 miles. And as a result, I had to stick to the side of the road, and it got really sketchy when I was on this section where the speed of the car was a lot faster. Now, I was originally going to try to make that same trip on the Emotion V11, which had a 1,500 watt-hour battery pack. The V11 definitely has a 30-mile range. Matter of fact, I think the V11 could actually go for about like 45, maybe 50 miles if you really kind of are judicious. Again, that's the issue, because if you can't go very fast, it becomes a lot more difficult to travel on roads like this. You have a car that is traveling at 35 miles per hour, and there's really not a lot of shoulder. As you can tell from this bicyclist, everyone has to cross the road in order to avoid him. When you are the bicyclist, it doesn't feel comfortable nor safe. Now, with 1,800 watt-hour, what the Begode T4 come with, you do have a little bit more leeway. The other thing you should be aware of is that Begode, once you're at 50%, for instance, your maximum speed on the S18, it's probably only about 20 miles per hour. And as you go lower, that number drops dramatically. So on my last trip, I actually stopped to recharge, not because the battery was completely dead, but because I was going so slow, it just didn't feel safe on a road like this. Where in Gotway, the speed reduction is a lot less, so you're able to draw deeper into the pack. My Monster, which has 2,400 watt-hour worth of battery pack, I don't even think about it. Before, when I was in Boston, I rode around just exploring, looking for food and what have you. I didn't really check what percentage my battery was at because I know I have more than enough battery to make this trip. It's nice having the option to keep up with traffic if you need to. Like, this is a lot more comfortable than if I were to stay to the site and then go at a 10-mile-per-hour clip. Even my Monster feels a little bit slow here. I wish I had a wheel that does like 50 or 60 miles per hour, because then I can cruise at 45 miles per hour and feel comfortable. I always hear stories about how people are struck while they're riding a bicycle on the side of the road. All it takes is a driver like that who's looking to pass and is impatient, step on his gas without seeing a small bicyclist or an EUC rider on the side, and you know, that's it, you're done.
I had to really push the Monster full blast and basically ride the beat for the first 20 miles of the trip, but thankfully the last 10 miles is on dedicated bike trails, so I can take it a bit slower.
I was down to probably doing about 30 miles and 35 maybe. Cars were definitely whizzing by, greater speed than 45 miles per hour. Everyone, you know, on these sort of country road go as fast as they possibly could get away with. So when the traffics are light, this is where the conundrum comes in, because if you were to ride the 134 volt Master, you have the speed, but you don't have the battery for a trip like this, even though that wheel also have 2,400 watt-hour worth of battery pack, because you are consuming it at a much higher pace. Higher voltage means widening the throughput of current. You're going to be burning through that battery pack a lot quicker than if you were at 100 volt. You're not going to be able to make trip like this. As a matter of fact, for Master, I've heard people who hadn't gotten range as low as 20 miles. Wind resistance square with speed, which means that as you increase your speed, the amount of load your motor has to output also increase exponentially. If I were traveling at 45 miles per hour on the road, I probably would have chewed through my pack much quicker, and I would have a lot less juice to go on from this point onward. So for a trip like this, the EX20S with 3,600 watt hour, that's probably your best bet, because then you really have plenty of current as backup that you probably still be comfortably traveling at top speed, even, you know, when you're 2/3 into your 30-mile journey. Woo, you hear that thing beat, man. It's not happy.
My Monster didn't last that much longer after this, and I had to call it quit with 5 miles to go and endure the walk of shame. But thankfully, I have the rest of the weekend to enjoy the beach and regroup.
Next, let's talk about the most compelling feature of the Begode T4, its size. That 16-inch tire makes it the smallest suspension-equipped electric unicycle on the market. As a matter of fact, since it carries a high torque motor, combined with that smaller diameter wheel, it may very well be the torquiest electric unicycle you can buy, even more so than the Begode MSP. And with that greater torque, you'll also get improved braking performance. So what are the downsides from running a 16-inch wheel? Well, if you're into speed, the T4 isn't for you. Aside from the limitation to its top speed at 35 miles per hour, the 16-inch wheel will also be less stable at speed comparing to the 19 or the 22-inch. This smaller wheel will be perfect for urban commute as well as off-road riding. Both require a lot of agility. The question of whether or not a 16-inch wheel is right for you really comes down to the kind of situations that you find yourself in. If this type of riding, i.e. country open road, where you have long stretch of relatively smooth road without much dips or rough conditions, then I would imagine that a larger 19 or 20-inch wheel would probably make more sense. However, if you're into trail riding, and again, if you want something that is torquey and super agile, and you know, you live in an urban area, then the 16-inch may make sense.
Now, if I sounded undecided about the T4, then you probably are right, and a large part of that is because whom it is from. And as my weekend winds to a close, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the many problems that stem from the fact that this is a Gotway Begode wheel.
Okay, so I end up actually getting a lift back. I'm taking the pedestrian route. I don't know the area well, and that roadway looked rather narrow for a bike and a car next to it. Look at the Charles. But back to the subject at hand. So a smaller, torquier suspension wheel, one which we have never seen before. Now, honestly, I'm still feeling somewhat pessimistic for the future of the T4, and I'm gonna tell you why. Is because of the popularity of SUV. Now, what does SUV have to do with an electric unicycle? Breaking all kind of rule, as usual. Goddamn New Yorker. People like SUV not because they need the off-road capability or the storage on a regular basis. They get it because they like the idea that they have the possibility of doing these adventurous things. Car is an expensive purchase, and since you can never predict what your future needs are, you always err on the side of caution and buy as much capability as you can afford. And as a result, people buy the biggest SUV they can fit in their garage, and the SUV becomes the most popular vehicle type as a result. And the specification of the Begode T4 is as much about what you're getting as it is about what you're not, and that is larger battery pack, stability at greater speed, and so on. And unless Begode somehow managed to offer this wheel at about the same price as the ORSs, as in somewhere in the $2,200 range, it would be sufficiently close to the cost of the top tier flagship wheel like the Master or the S22 that anyone who is considering buying an electric unicycle would likely spring for the extra and just get one of those. And yes, the Begode T4 will be perfect for someone who already owns a larger and faster wheel, but I still think that those of us who own more than one electric unicycle are the exception rather than the rule. Finally, there is the question of trust. You see, Begode had released a rapid succession of suspension wheel over the past year. There was the EX, the Hero, the EX20S, the Master, and then finally the T4. And with each release, it is increasingly difficult for anyone to think that there isn't going to be another wheel coming right after that would offer more performances, better configuration, and what have you. Not to mention all the dealers who are actually stocking and selling these wheels are now probably feeling rather crummy since they're stuck with stock that's less than 6 months old, but yet is now technically considered to be outdated. And so the purchase of any Begode product that isn't a guarantee hit like the Master become an increasingly risky proposition. Will Begode release a 134-volt T5 in the near future? Who knows?
I end up staying overnight at my friend's place in Boston just so I can catch the morning train, hoping that Tuesday morning will be less popular and so everything would go smoother. And it certainly seemed that my gamble had paid off.
No one else on this train.
Then there is the Begode fact, which are the unfortunate quality control and engineering issues that make their wheel just a bit less reliable and iffy and maybe prone to fire. Not as much of an issue as if you're an experienced EUC rider and know what to expect and what to look out for.
So for new EUC riders, I typically recommend that they avoid buying Begode as their first wheel for this reason. Not that other brands don't have issues, they all do, but at least for me, I just trust them a bit less.
So what do I think of the Begode T4? Despite my confessed love for the bigger 22-inch form factor. But not that I'm gonna complain for having more options. And if the T4 does turn out to be a torquey, fun and responsive wheel that we hope it turns out to be, then I love it just the same.
So, are you excited about the Begode T4, or are you just saying you are but will somehow mysteriously end up with a pre-order on the V13 or the Master Pro? Well, the comment section below is just what you need for your sorry excuses for going either way. And you know what? Aha! I somehow managed to trick you into wasting another, get this, 20 minutes of your life, but I hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to my supporter on Patreon. Please check out the link in the video description below if you enjoy and like to support my work. As always, as much as we all love electric unicycle, the only way for us to get better wheel is to grow as a community. So tell your friend, teach them how to ride, and get them hooked. Until the next video, thank you.